Blessings, beloveds. Welcome back. Let's talk about the full moon in Leo, which is coming up in a couple of days' time. So I'm going to approach it with some esoteric astrology, some traditional and some evolutionary astrology. Sometimes I like to mix it up, relative to a new moon or a full moon or whatever it is I'm looking at. Because there are many different lenses we can look through, and there are many different levels, therefore, that can reach us and inspire us as well. And inspire is a good word for fire. That is, that the full moon being in a fire sign, Leo, which is a fixed fire masculine sign, ruling the heart center, the heart chakra. And think about for a moment, just actually before I explain that, so esoterically, Leo is the light of the soul, which is such a beautiful sentence or way of expressing it. Think about the 7 traditional chakras, at least, that most traditions are familiar with. So the heart center is actually what enables us to connect to the higher centers, right? So the lower chakras, and lower is not to be interpreted as a negative, bad, wrong, etc. It's just that they are simply the lower chakras, and they do correspond to a lot of the earthly, physical matter and experiences. And so when you get to the heart chakra, which is Leo, which opens our center, opens our the center of our heart, and enables us to expand into consciousness. Why? Because the polarity to Leo is Aquarius, the opposite sign. So when we are working from a heart-centered place, in esoteric teachings at least, we are working with the purest form of our heart expression, which really connects to ray number 2 in esoteric astrology, because the Sun and Jupiter are the planets that correspond to ray number 2. And ray number 2 is about the heart, ruled by the Sun, which is the heart center expressing love, wisdom through Jupiter. So it's a very, very powerful full moon when we look at it through that lens. So the heart center relative to the chakras is what opens us up, expands our consciousness, and enables us to, I suppose, to give birth, birth to the form of creativity, the spark of creativity, which is birth, to enable that to have an expression that is not just about our own personal little self, but to become a conduit of love, heart-centered expression for the benefit of humanity, and how that may indeed serve the consciousness of humanity, right? That's one way we can look at it. So the light of the soul. So Leo in esoteric astrology, first of all, in esoteric astrology, there are 7 rays, okay? The main 2 that I generally work with is the personality ray and the soul ray. And so fundamentally, the premise of esoteric astrology is for the individual, the soul, to fuse the personality with the soul, to infuse it together, right? To bring enough consciousness in and open the heart so that it becomes this conduit of expression of love, divine love, and also the mind of God. And the mind of God comes in because Leo corresponds to ray number 5. So there's a mixture of things going on here. We have ray 1 is strong for Leo because Leo is one of the signs that belongs to ray number 1. Ray number 2, let me just go back to ray number 1. Ray number 1 is ruled by Pluto and Vulcan, and those are the 2 agents of transformation. We know from an evolutionary level that Pluto corresponds to the soul. It corresponds to the evolution of the soul and the evolution of the planet and all souls, all beings. So it's fundamentally about transformation, the transformative journey in our evolutionary path. Vulcan, who is very well understood or recognized or worked with in esoteric astrology, he was the blacksmith. The blacksmith of what? He was the blacksmith of working so much on himself in order to eliminate the attachments of the physical plane, as it were, so that he can transcend, transmute, transform, evolve. And so he worked away in a dungeon, literally, and he was renowned for his alchemical blacksmith type of work. And so he removed himself from the personality, ego, desires, and attachments for the purposes of evolution in order to do the inner work. So Vulcan takes us inside of ourselves. It's where we work away from everybody else, behind the scenes, where no one sees that kind of work that we do. It's the alchemical work of the soul. So ray number 1 is very powerful for that reason. And Leo corresponds to ray number 1. So ray number 2, which is ruled by the Sun and Jupiter, corresponds actually to Aquarius and Leo, for that matter. Leo is connected to ray number 2, and Aquarius is because Jupiter is the esoteric ruler of Aquarius. So, this, when we're looking at a full moon in Leo, we have the Sun in Leo, don't we? The Sun in Aquarius, right? And the moon in Leo. So there's the opposition, which creates the full moon. So in other words, when we're looking at a full moon in Leo, we are always interfacing the Sun's energy as well, which is the opposite sign. So we're working with these two archetypes, these polarities that correspond to the individual spark of creative expression, Leo, and manifested in a larger sort of level of expression, consciousness, understanding, understanding towards humanity, which is Aquarius. So they're the two archetypes that we're working with relative to this full moon. What I might do is bring up the chart, just a couple of other points from the esoteric level. That's right. So ray number 5, which is one of the signs, Leo is one of the signs that connects to ray number 5. Ray number 5 is the vehicle of expression for the ideas of the mind of God. So let me just say that again. It's the vehicle of expression for the ideas in the mind of God. And it corresponds to the planet Venus. So, see, the heart-centered Leo that comes from that authentic, heart-centered place, working with the ideas of God, is coming through and is coming forth. It's not seeking that. If we go back to the personality level of Leo, it's very much to do with, yes, self-expression, creativity, radiance of the heart, love, loyalty, self-expression, romance, passion, fire, energy, and so forth, right? So when we transcend the personality level of Leo, then all those qualities become expressed for the purposes of humanity at large. Aquarius, the opposite sign. It's no longer just about myself and receiving the attention and glorification for my own creativity and just, how fantastic I might be in my creative expression or creative pursuits or success and so on and so forth. That's the personality of Leo. There is no judgment here. This is just a distinction. When we get to the more transcendent level of Leo, which is the radiance of the heart pouring through the mind of God, Aquarius, in order to serve humanity. That's what we're talking about. That's the energy on an esoteric level. The mind of God connects to ray number 5. And again, going back to ray number 2, which is Sun Jupiter, that is one of the most beautiful rays well, I guess I'm a bit biased because I'm a soul ray number 2, so I very much resonate with that particular ray. But yes, Sun Jupiter, which is about the heart-centered love poured out for humanity, being a conduit for the divine expression, divine source, divine love, divine mind, and pouring that out through what you do, through your dharma, through the work that you do, through the service that you give, and how that may reach and touch other people, the importance of that, how it can influence, inspire, encourage. Going back to the word inspire, which is in spirit, all fire signs correspond to spirit. Fire is spirit. And spirit is the spark of life. So, fire signs, they energize, they inspire, they encourage, they give life. It's the life force, life vitality, spirit, fire, energy. I'll unpack this a little bit further when I bring up the chart. Just one other thing I'd like to point out about Leo. Whilst Leo has this tremendous capacity for creativity, let's say, and in harmonics, when we're looking at harmonic charts, we usually look to the 5th harmonic chart in order to assess a person's creative expression. It's not just about looking for what is this person good at creatively, because the fact that you were born means that you are creative. The 5th house, number 5, and Venus as well for that matter, the Venus star point, pentagram coming from the Greek word 5, pen there, five fingers, that creates the Venus star point. Number 5 is creation, in other words. The 5th house in the astrological birth chart corresponds to children or giving birth or your own personal creative expression. But it is also just simply your style of expression. It's how you express yourself as a person. So it doesn't necessarily have to mean that you have to have a particular craft of expression in order to be creative. Your style of expression, in whichever mode that may be, that's the Leo side to you. That's how you express yourself. And so that's what the 5th harmonic can point to as well, your 5th house and so forth. And the sun in your chart, wherever it's located, regardless of its sign, it has that quality and element to it again, of course. So there's a few things, a few other aspects that correspond to this full moon. So let me just bring up the chart for you guys. So again, this chart is drawn from my location. It's going to look different based on your location. So we are not assessing at all the location of the planets or the asteroids or the points. We're merely looking at the fact that the sun and the moon are opposite each other, which creates a full moon. We want to see what other aspects does this particular full moon have. Now, the interesting thing is that the lead up to this full moon, we've had the Sun-Saturn conjunction, transiting Sun, conjunct transiting Saturn in the sign of Aquarius, right? So you can see that, where is it? A few days ago, for instance, the Sun was at 4 degrees of Aquarius, and therefore it was right next to Saturn. Quite a heavy dose, quite a heavy energy. That was actually the day when Larry King transcended, the very famous news person, interviewer and so forth, who's been in the business for a very, 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 very long time and was greatly respected and is greatly revered for his professionalism, authenticity, ability to connect with people, understand people and listen. He had incredible listening skills and was able to dive in very deeply with people when he sat with them in a particular setting. So I found that correlation, just in terms of a day transit, as it were, it was just quite interesting that that was the day when he moved on. He left the world when there was a Sun-Saturn conjunction. And Saturn is separation, and the Sun rules kings, leaders, big personalities, people that are famous, known, etc. So as we've progressed forward, you know, we get to the 29th of January when we have this full moon. Now, if you look at the position of the Sun, what is actually going on is that, I don't know how many of you are aware of midpoints, but there is an area in astrology that personally is very powerful and, in my opinion, very useful to learn and understand and work with as part of your astrological learning or toolbox. Midpoints can show you a narrative, a theme that's so significant that you otherwise would completely miss. So it's well worth exploring midpoints in your own charts and in other people's charts. And also when it comes to midpoints, you can look at transiting midpoints as well. So for example, you might have transiting Uranus at the moment, hitting off the midpoint of your Sun and Moon, or your Sun and Venus, or whatever it may be. That can be a pretty important transit, something you wouldn't see unless you actually worked with midpoints. In this chart, what we have is the position of Saturn, which is at 4 degrees of Aquarius, and the position of Pluto, which is at 25 degrees of Aquarius. And let me just get some drawing tools. I suppose that will do. No, that's not going to do. Let me just clear that. Where is the... Okay, so there's Pluto. Okay, at 25 of Capricorn. There's Saturn at 4 of Aquarius. Where are you, little arrow? And of course there's the Sun at 9 of Aquarius. And on this side, well, we have the Moon and Hygeia in an exact conjunction. So Hygeia is the asteroid of health, the goddess of health and healing. Her father was the god of medicine. His name is Asclepios. So she's been a very prominent figure throughout the COVID-19 pandemic breakout, etc. When she was in Gemini, for instance, that was the episode within this 3D reality drama where the washing of the hands became virtually an obsession for people. So that was when transiting Hygeia was in Gemini. Now clearly she's moved on and she's in the sign of Leo. So at the midpoint of Sun Pluto in this full moon chart is Saturn. So Saturn, in other words, holds the energy of the expression of this full moon, really, but of the Sun Pluto energies as well. So in other words, what I'm saying is that this full moon has a very strong Saturnian energy to it, even though it is a full moon in Leo. We can't discount the fact that Saturn is holding his place there. In other words, perhaps what we might ordinarily seek outside of ourselves in terms of creative expression, our own creative endeavors or pathways or projects or whatever it may be, there is some sense of limitation here because of Saturn's midpoint position relative to the Sun and Pluto. So Saturn's saying, well, yeah, sure, you need to get in touch with your heart center, your heart space, open your heart. But there are some limitations still, and a lot of people can clearly feel that. There's still enormous frustration on the planet with the uncertainty of where things are heading, and the lack of solution or resolution that still seems to be the case. So the other interesting aspect with this full moon chart that I think is important to pay attention to is the Sun-Pluto conjunction, Pluto-Venus conjunction in Capricorn. So they are exactly conjunct on this day. And I guess that's quite an interesting signature there, because if we think about 2021, we had a new moon in Capricorn, right? So there was a sun-moon conjunction. It was actually at the 23rd degree of Capricorn, and Pluto was there. So we started this year with Pluto's presence relative to the lunation cycles, right? The first new moon of 2021 was conjunct Pluto. And so 2 weeks later, when we get to the full moon, Venus is caught up now to Pluto, and she's forming an exact conjunction. So there's still a lot of breaking down of a lot of old structures, a lot of conditioned beliefs, a lot of conditioned layers within our own psyche. And in this case, in terms of Venus, it's really got to do with our own values, doesn't it? You know, it's got to do with our relationships, our money, our whole understanding of the world of relationships, and how we are relating and sharing and giving and receiving. This is just a one-day transit, so we're not expecting necessarily really miraculous transformations as such, but it is always the case that when you see a signature like this, even though it's just a 1 or 2 day effect, this can be a trigger for some bigger themes and underlying themes that are going on for you personally that would be reflected through your own chart. And so a daily transit like that can be the catalyst, if you like, for what might open something up that's actually been you have been working on for quite some time. Otherwise, you can just go through this day, for instance, Sun, Venus, Pluto conjunction, and you may not notice it very much at all. You may. It just depends where that conjunction is in your chart as well. But my point is that these sorts of conjunctions are incredibly powerful from the point of view of what they can activate and trigger in your own chart relative to some ongoing themes that are already present. So, we have this little signature here of transformation around what we, I suppose, have held strong value towards in terms of the structure of reality as it has been known to us, up to this point, because the structure of reality is changing, isn't it? The consensus reality is changing quite a lot, just through what's the energies that have been smashing through since 2020. So we are still we're still cracking those walls open. There's still much to be cleared out. We are, in some parts, we're only at the beginning, so there's much more to see. Okay, so the thing that I think helps out this full moon in Leo is the Sun-Jupiter conjunction. So here we have the Sun at 9 of Aquarius, and Jupiter at 9 of Aquarius, the Moon 9 of Leo, and Hygeia at 9 of Leo. So we're sort of, I guess, we're experiencing a sense of being able to tap into that Jupiter frequency a lot more through this full moon. And don't forget, as I said, esoterically, well, Jupiter is the ruler of Aquarius, and Leo corresponds to ray number 2, and Jupiter corresponds to ray number 2. So we have like this double signature, if you like, of Jupiter and Leo, and well, we'll throw in Aquarius as well, as encapsulating the vibration of this full moon from an esoteric level, which is all about love, wisdom. It's all about the heart center. It's much more, if you want it to be, if you can tune into that side of you of opening your heart center to connect with the mind of God, ray number 5, which corresponds to Leo, to to infuse God's ideas. And that might just be, one particular idea or sense of something that filters through for you, that can be very powerful and illuminating for the radiance of your heart center, your heart energy, relative to this lunation cycle and what you're able to give and to share as well. I mean, there is a lot of love that's expressed and that's radiating through a lot of beings on the planets. If you focus on CNN and Fox News and so forth, you won't see too much of that. We did see a beautiful expression of that with the young lady, Amanda, I've just forgotten her surname, who shared one of her poems, right, in the inauguration of the USA, the Biden being sworn in and so forth. Now, I'm not here to talk about politics. I'm just merely pointing to her, Amanda that is, as a catalyst, as a vehicle of expression of Sun Jupiter, ray number 2. And we can bring in Aquarius into this as well, which is about humanity, fairness, justice, equality, the human family at large, moving forward in love as opposed to conflict and hate and war and separation and division and anger and judgment and so forth. I mean, I don't know how many of you listened to her poem, and it's not about whether you're interested in Biden or Trump or politics or whatever. That stuff actually just takes a backseat somewhere down there in the scheme of what that soul expressed in that moment from her heart relative to her soul's journey and path. And what I heard as well was that she had a very severe speech impediment. And one thing that, let me just... Do I have her chart here? No, but I have it accessible just here. I just want to make a point about speech impediment, okay, relative to this individual, because there's a lot of people that have speech impediments, okay. So yeah, what I was thinking was that, I mean, provided that the details that have been given publicly relative to her date of birth are correct. Now, at this point, I believe they are, but maybe they're not. I don't know. The source is not. It's one source. It's just through I think some news channels and Wikipedia or something to that extent, right? So we still have to kind of keep an open mind that there may be a possibility that the date is not correct. I think the date is correct, but there has been a question has been raised about her year of birth, because it has been said that she's 22, and it has also been said that she's 23. Now, if there's an error there, things might change. But let's just stick to the date that's been given, which is the 7th of March, 1998. I don't have a time of birth because that information has not been released. Regardless of that, she has Mercury in Pisces. That can be a speech impediment, okay? It's also conjunct Mars. Mars is at the last degree of Pisces, it's at the 29th degree. So from an evolutionary level, that soul is here to complete something incredibly important and very powerful to her soul's evolution that has to do with her speech, okay? And because it's in the archetype of Pisces, and she is a Pisces, and she's got the South Node in Jupiter and Pallas Athena all in Pisces, well, that's the poet. That's the poetic speech. And we could say that the Mars conjunct the Mercury can act as the force that can be powerful in parts, but in other ways can be it can be that sort of aggression that can come out, which can be, a speech. I don't know exactly what sort of speech impediment she had, but it's my understanding that she struggled to pronounce certain letters or certain words, right? And it wasn't until recently where she overcome this this speech impediment that she had. I think since she was like 2 years old. I know I've gone off the full moon in Leo, but I thought this is interesting just to mention. So anyway, let's move away from Amanda. I just wanted to bring her in as a way of example of a soul that's been born to reach humanity, if you like, the collective, from such a soft place, poetry, something that's been partly lost, in terms of the appreciation for poetic writing or poetic expression to some extent. In other ways it's not lost at all, but it's poetry is something that touches the heart, it touches the soul, it touches it touches a narrative, a space, an energy, something deep inside us, that is beyond our own personal ego and personality. It's something that reaches into the vastness of the collective, right? Which ultimately takes us back to that spark and connection to source. We are born and we take on this body and this personality, which is part of our developmental process through many lifetimes. It is important to develop a personality. That's why it happens. That's why we have that experience, or many of those experiences over many lifetimes. Once we've developed this strong personality, as it were, and we have become self-actualized, which is Leo, the personality is Leo. Self-actualization is the journey of Leo. And to transcend that self-actualization journey is to go to the opposite, which is Aquarius, right? To bring forth the creative spark of expression to serve humanity. So birth, personality, self-actualization, heart center, expansion, consciousness. And why do we go through that journey? Well, there could be many answers to that question. Perhaps I'll withdraw that question. But just very simply put, the spark of divinity which gives birth to the creative self, person, to self-actualize, to find your way through all your different lifetimes and all your different experiences, to find your way back to your heart center, to be able to release the chains and the walls that, and some people have a fortress around their heart, and I've known many in my life, to break that open and to have to really feel, to feel that love radiance and love for humanity and love for all is not an easy thing for us to do, because we have, the mind, the personality, the ego, which comes with its own values, judgments, perceptions, beliefs, etc. And that's the personality level of things. But, once we start to initiate the heart, and initiation is part of esoteric work, esoteric astrology, and living your life more from an esoteric level. It's initiating the heart center to open, to give that love, to give that wisdom, Sun, Jupiter, to give it without condition, unconditional love. And that the process of that journey is what helps us find our way back to source. And in evolutionary astrology, it is also understood that the ultimate the ultimate reaching of our highest evolutionary point, you could say, is when we can become spiritually aligned with divine source, right? So that, in other words, we eliminate what's called separating desires, because we all have separating desires. Separating desires just simply refers to the more attachments and desires we have in the physical plane and experience of things, the more we are separated from source. And there's nothing wrong or bad about that. That's, again, part of our growth and our evolution. But the more we work consciously and initiate our heart and align the personality and the soul and bring consciousness and awareness into our journey and understand what we are doing, the more we eliminate those separating desires, which is said then that we become closer to source again, because we've eliminated the desires that take us away from source. You know, there's an old biblical quote that says, you know, I've just forgotten the exact quote, but it's perfect for this this level of interpretation. Something about, you know, what is it to lose your soul in order to gain, you know, the world, something to that, right? It's a little bit different to that, but it essentially encapsulates that. It's like, what is it to gain the world, right, and lose your soul? You know, what's that going to do for you at the end of the day? So it's a little bit like that, relative to separating desires, eliminating those so that we can find our way back to source. That's what we're doing. But we have to go through all these trials and tribulations. You know, we have to go through all these different experiences, and every person, every situation and experience and encounter that you have is in some way, shape or form your teacher. Even the ones that, and perhaps even more so, the ones that trigger you, that push your buttons, that anger you, that upset you, they are your best teachers, actually. Because when we can arrive within ourselves at a place where we align the heart and the soul, the personality and the soul, we are less likely to make the harsh judgments on others, right? To well, what am I trying to say? I guess I've got it. I'm feeling it, but I'm just struggling with the language. It's 41 degrees here today. I think that's, I don't know, 90 Fahrenheit or something ridiculous like that. It's really hot. So I'm a little bit kind of, yeah. All right, let me just get back to my train of thought. I've lost that train of thought. I'll just have to come back to it if it comes back to me. Let's go back to this chart. That was an esoteric trail of feelings and images that are coming to me. The language to express that as I completely want to is a little bit out of sync in the last couple of sentences. So I'll just leave that there. So yes, that's right. Okay. Now this full moon is forming a square to Uranus and Mars. It's such a interesting full moon. The sun is conjunct Jupiter, the moon is conjunct Hygeia, and the Uranus-Mars conjunction in Taurus is forming a square. So, I mean, this just speaks to the story that's already present, that's already there, which is new reality being born, that connects to every soul, to the entirety of humanity, which is all the Aquarius energy. And of course the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in Aquarius that kicked things off. So we're seeing, in some parts there's some unison or unity that seems to be taking place. On the other hand, there's also incredible frustration and anger still in many parts, which is you could say the Uranus-Mars conjunction. In Taurus, it's got to do with our self-preservation, our survival, what we need to do to survive, given the nature of events, the nature of reality that's still incredibly challenging and still incredibly uncertain. And here we have, the Jupiter conjunct the Sun is most certainly the urge to expand, to travel, to tap into a greater sense of confidence and enthusiasm. The square to Uranus is not a Jupiter square Uranus. Don't think that that's a challenging aspect as such. Okay, square aspects are dynamic, they're active, they're tension provoking, conflict provoking, incredibly challenging. Yes, they are all that, but the nature of Uranus and Jupiter, those two archetypes, those two planetary frequencies, are really about lucky breakthroughs. Lucky being Jupiter, breakthroughs being Uranus. Okay, so that aspect itself is fantastic, but what we have here, it's a little bit of a different picture, because we have Uranus and Mars actually being square this full moon. So there's a part of us that's wanting to really work with the creative Leo lion heart-centered energy, and we should, but I guess from an esoteric level, we need to take it up a level. We need to understand, tune into, what is it about my own creative journey and process at the moment that speaks to something bigger than myself in terms of service to humanity. That's the high level of Leo. The square, though, from Mars adds quite a bit of tension, I think, because Mars just really wants to race ahead and kind of do what he wants to do. In Taurus, he's a little bit frustrated as well, because he has to really slow down. So there is some tension here. This is actually called a T-square, right, with the Sun and the Moon, Uranus and Mars. So this full moon, in other words, is the energy of this full moon is being channeled somewhat through the Mars-Uranus archetypes, which are square the full moon, right? So Mars-Uranus is simply about wanting to act freely, to express your desires, to feel totally liberated and free within yourself, to be able to express your desires. But again, this is a square aspect, so there is some tension implied, meaning that you may not just be able to go out and fully charge into this project or this creative process that perhaps you've been working on for quite some time. So yeah, it's tension provoking, right? But on the other hand, Uranus is also, the presence of Uranus here is saying, okay, well, let's talk about liberation, freedom, and individuation, right? What aspect in your life at the moment could you say that really lights up an area for you that makes you feel more liberated or more authentic on your path? So Uranus there is kind of getting you to question that a little bit. So it's not just about my special talents, Moon in Leo, my. It's actually about what am I tapping into my heart center that I'm giving expression to that enables me to feel more free, more liberated, so that I can continue to walk on the individuated path, Uranus, from a heart-centered place that's truly authentic. That would be the most positive spin and the most positive outcome we can get from this tension-provoking square of Uranus to the sun and the moon, right? So, and it is, the sun and the moon, it's the inner feminine and masculine, our own position with that and how we express that, right? How we live through that. And obviously that has to do, just with our relationships in general, to men and to women as well. And, the Mars is, it's quite agitated because, again, it's feeling very restless, there next to Uranus, even though it's moved away from Uranus now and it's well and truly moving away. But there's been a lot of restless, frustrated sort of energy that's needed an outlet and a channel. And for some people, perhaps they've struggled to find that outlet for it. And so this full moon kind of illuminates all of that, perhaps you could say. It might even be illuminating some of the underlying frustrations that are there already. On the other hand, if you work with this on an esoteric level, it's really about opening your heart authentically so that you can remain on this path of individuation and feel aligned and true within yourself, regardless of the reality that is presented to you. A lot of people still, I guess, are very challenged with the current nature of reality and do struggle to detach from it. And that can be for very valid reasons. Sometimes, it might be a member in their family that's unwell or that's going through a very difficult time due to the current circumstances, and so on and so forth. And I completely understand all that, and I have total compassion and empathy for you if that is the case. But I do know, though, that regardless of what's going on out there, it is always going to come back to how we feel, and what we experience is going to come back to the state that we hold within ourselves, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and so forth. And so what I'm saying is that when somebody you care about is going through a really tough time, it's one thing to be empathetic, but it's another thing to jump on that train with them and take that same ride. Because when you do that, there's a few things that happen. You lose your own power, and you just feed the drama of what's going on in that person's life anyway. So, and that principle really applies to the reality and the paradigm before us at the moment. Yes, there is XYZ taking place, but it doesn't mean that you have to participate in the fear and the drama of what's being projected, particularly through mainstream media and the consensus reality. And it doesn't mean that you are denying it, or you're in denial, or you're delusional, or you don't care. It doesn't mean any of that. In fact, it more so means that you hold a higher vibration within yourself, and you're able to detach from the crisis and the drama that appears. And you're much better equipped to facilitate the process of the light that's coming through and the love that's coming through. And so this full moon can just be a really powerful reminder, if you like, of that heart-centered love vibration that we all need to feel aligned with within ourselves, and radiate that to the world at large, to our own environment, to the people we interact with. No love is lost, and no light is lost. That it's never gone unnoticed. There's a lot of scriptures and traditions that point to every little act of love or kindness or generosity, no matter how small it is, never goes unnoticed by source. It never goes unnoticed. And so this is where we need to get away from the narcissistic personality side of Leo, perhaps wanting, attention or validation from those around us or external of us or the public or whatever it may be, and just dive deeper into our own soul, our own heart center, and also the soul in the heart, and when you do dive deeper into there, the feelings that can come up and the connection that can come up is a lot more powerful than any validation that anybody else can give you from out there. Because even if the whole world gave you validation today, if you don't hold that within your own self, well then tomorrow when you wake up and that world doesn't give you that validation again, you're left back in the same space, aren't you, with yourself, dealing with whatever it is that's going on inside you. So it is all about the work that we do on ourselves, and that comes back to, in the beginning of this video I was talking about Vulcan, the blacksmith, the alchemical soul work that we do, that is not about the limelight and the glamour and the recognition and the how many likes you get for this and how many comments you get for that and how many whatever you get for whatever, but the private, deep, reflective work, soul work that you do, that's between you and source, and you and you. And Vesta, the goddess Vesta, is another principle for that kind of journey and process in our life. And in Virgo, which now she's retrograde in Virgo, meaning she's going to be in Virgo for a little bit longer than what she would normally stay in Virgo, she's really taking us through that process, because Virgo is the reminder that we are all imperfect and we can always improve, no matter how good we think we are, no matter how much we think we've achieved. There is always something to work on, and it is the archetype of Virgo that is the reminder of that in our life. So Virgo is, thank God actually Virgo is in the zodiac, because the sign before Virgo is Leo. And so for the first 5 signs of the zodiac, we've developed the sense of I am, here I am. I've said this before, Virgo, Scorpio, and Pisces, the most complex archetypes in the zodiac. There was just a couple of things I wanted to say here, read rather. So Leo is a fixed fiery sign, as we all, most of us are aware. I'm reading from Soul-Centered Astrology. The sons and daughters of mind are children of fire, because our divinity is a creating and consuming flame. This is also the flame of purification, and as it expresses itself through the first ray, where Leo is also found, it burns and destroys anything which hinders the progress of the creative will. In this respect, Leo is also related to the 2 planets of the first ray, Pluto and Vulcan, which is what I said before. So in other words, because Leo corresponds to the first ray, which is ruled by, the first ray is ruled by Pluto and Vulcan, Leo is destined on an esoteric level to go through this profound purification process that enables consciousness and greater love and wisdom to radiate through that incredible, magnetic, powerful heart center chakra, which Leo corresponds to. Because the more, in other words, the more love we can radiate, the more love we're going to see out there, you know, the more love we're going to experience, the more unity we'll experience as well. The most powerful way to touch somebody, to reach somebody, is through their heart. And that's not an opinion. That's really absolutely true. It does. You could have somebody that's a scholar in the most prestige university who's got 10 degrees under their belt or masters or whatever, but if their heart center is closed, that work is really, it's not going to reach the way it would if the heart center was open. So it all comes from the heart. The mind of God, which is connected to ray number 5, that's not the mind that corresponds to our left linear brain mind. That would really connect more to the right brain intuition. Sagittarius, 9th house, Jupiter, which is the archetype of wisdom, intuition, understanding, knowing, seeing. And you don't receive that wisdom and that seeing by looking out there. You connect with that by going back inside. Because all the wisdom and all the truth and all the answers that you are looking for are already within. Hence, you know, the expression, the word gnosis, which is a Greek word, which translates to know thyself. Why was that term ever, why did that come about, know thyself? What's the importance of that? Think about it. All right, and just to finish up, because I've gone on a little longer than I planned. Yeah, I think that's it actually. Just this, I just really love this line here, and I just would like to read this. Relative to Aquarius and Leo, that polarity, as understood from the esoteric lens of things, right? So Leo is polarized to Aquarius, as I've said. The sign of group consciousness, which is Aquarius, right? So Leo, if Leo is the heart, rather, Aquarius is the circulatory system. Think about this comment. That which is centered in the fixed, fiery sign of the lion has to be distributed through the airy networking of the water bearer, which is Aquarius. So I'll just read that again. Leo is polarized to Aquarius, the sign of group consciousness. If Leo is the heart, which it is, Aquarius is the circulatory system. So that power, that radiation of heart center, of heart energy, of heart radiance, love, gets circulated because its opposite sign is Aquarius, and therefore is transmitted through the circulation into humanity. Leo, Aquarius. So that's what we're dealing with when, in a nutshell, when we're talking about Leo, Aquarius from an esoteric level. That's all I have for you guys today. I know about 10 minutes ago, I lost train of thought there with what I was saying, but hopefully it's all kind of fallen back into place as I've pushed on, and that's what I've done. I've pushed on. Okay. So anyway, see you guys very soon, and I hope you all have a really radiant, loving, heart-centered Leo full moon. Playful, happy, joyous. Yeah, and just shine your light, you know. It's about shining your light, your heart center, but shining the light to activate the polarity Aquarius, so that the radiance of the heart center that is infused from divine source creation to all things and from the mind of God is then transmitted and circulated around, so that it circulates into humanity. Good place to leave it. Much love, and see you guys soon. Thanks for listening if you stayed all the way through, and even if you didn't. Much love. Bye.